What's up, Wall fans, common sensors, social media world, and of course, podcast consumers? Welcome to the video feed for Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall. This is episode 29, and I am your favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. We've got an interesting show today. I struggled this weekend to kind of, I don't know, it's just been one of those weekends where I was like, do I even? But with it being holidays coming up, we needed to go ahead and make sure we another episode in there, so we're gonna get through today. Got some interesting things to talk about, lots of common sense things to talk about, as well as a couple funny stories, and of course our positive news. So all that being said, let's just get into it.
Who 1, 2, 3, go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, Wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers, welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall. Am, of course, your favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and this is episode 29. 29. We're halfway through December now. 12 days until Christmas, till the big guy comes down the chimney, if you've got kids at home, or maybe he comes for you if you're an adult. Santa stopped coming for me. He comes just for my kid now. Although I think he does bring my wife things, which is she's much more deserving than I am, and that's probably why. Santa probably looks at me, he's like, no, you don't get anything this year. That's pretty typical. I'm pretty used to it. But we're getting close to that big day, and that means we're, of course, a week away from our annual Christmas special. But before we get into episode 29, we always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us before episodes, after episodes, during episodes, whenever you so please. You can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's kind of a main page. We're pretty active on Facebook, so make sure you like our page, check back often for updates. And of course, YouTube, head over to YouTube, search Go Tell It to the Wall, subscribe to our channel. That's where you're going to find all of our videos, all of these video feeds, depending where you're watching this. If you're watching the video feed, or if you're just listening to audio and you're interested in seeing my lovely face, you can see all of those on YouTube. They are, of course, also on Facebook. But again, head over to YouTube, search Go Tell It to the Wall, subscribe to our channel. My own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean. That's right, at SoCalSean. Follow me on there and get some awesome photos. I've said this a couple times recently, we're getting more Go Tell It to the Wall content up there, but that is not going to be all Go Tell It to the Wall content, so keep that in mind. But please follow on Instagram. I enjoy the Instagram much more than I do the Twitter. I only go to Twitter when I'm like, what's happening in the news? It's like my news feed is Twitter. I don't actually like to interact with people on Twitter. It's very rare. There's like 2 people I interact with, and it's because I know them personally and kind of have a funny back and forth. But not a lot of Twitter usage going on in my life, just in general. And of course, our website, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That'd be the most important thing I mentioned of all those social plugs. Not only because it's your one-stop shop for everything that is Go Tell It to the Wall and SeanO'RourkeLive.com, but you're also going to find links to those platforms that I just mentioned, so you don't even have to remember them. Although it's funny, I always say you don't even have to remember them, and you're listening to a podcast and you can just rewind a little bit and figure it out. It's not like, if you're of a certain age, kids these... I just did it. I said kids these days. But it's funny. Every generation is going to have this. And kids these days, I remember when like a phone number would flash across the TV screen, for something you wanted to call or do or whatever it was, and you had to run. You're like, oh my God, oh no. And now it's you don't even have to rewind it, to get that info. You're like, oh, what was that commercial? Oh, let me just Google that name. Oh, boom. There we go. You don't have to remember websites anymore. It's kind of wild. Just the advances that we've made since internet started becoming more mainstream. There's a thing you used to have to you'd keyword search that would take you to websites, and now with how intuitive everything is, it's just crazy. But make sure you're bookmarked SeanO'RourkeLive.com, and you can always rewind the podcast and remember those exact platforms that I'm talking about. And don't forget, on SeanO'RourkeLive.com, you're going to find a link to our Patreon. Please help us out if you can. And also our merch. I believe you should still be able to order some merch and get it in time for Christmas. Definitely do that over the next couple days, though, just to be certain. I know, especially with shipping delays, it's been wild. I can't even keep track of all the shipping that's been going on to my house, because everything is all of the Christmas shopping is done via shipping this year, obviously, and I do a lot of that regularly anyway, just because it's it's easy to order certain things. But I am very much a brick and mortar shopper, especially at the holidays, and can't do that this year. So it's been interesting, especially with certain things, because I'm like, no, I want to go out and look at this, and nope, gotta just kind of order it and hope that's what exactly what I was going for. It's just one of those years, but but help us out on the merch. Get yourself some Christmas gifts. You should, like I said, still be able to get them in time for Christmas, because we're still almost 2 weeks out, a little less than 2 weeks out, so a little bit of time there. The Christmas special next week, like I mentioned, it's essentially a Christmas themed Go Tell to the Wall episode, but this will be the first Common Sense Sundays Christmas themed episode. And for those of you that are new to the podcast, it's just Christmas, our usual topics, but Christmas themed. And I tend to dress like embarrassingly Christmas style things. So look forward to that. We've got the Charlie Brown Christmas tree already in the studio. It was actually in the studio last week. I didn't put it on camera, but got that sitting in here. That's how you know it's Christmas time here at Go Tell to the Wall in the studio. Is the Charlie Brown Christmas tree is there. It's Christmas. And not only is it Christmas, not Christmas yet, we're coming up on Christmas, but we're actually in the middle of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to everyone out there who celebrates Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. If you don't celebrate Hanukkah, I think it's okay to tell people happy Hanukkah, even if they don't celebrate it. I have a lot of Jewish friends who celebrate Hanukkah, so I'm usually very much aware of when we all know it happens in December, but when it's actually happening. Tonight is night 4 of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to everyone out there. And I've got a funny story for you in parenting regarding my kiddo and kind of Hanukkah. And she's learning all about, she's 4 and barely 4. So it's funny, I always forget that this is her 5th Christmas, but her first Christmas, she was just like this tiny, I was looking, a picture came up on our Google thing the other day of me at one of the family Christmas parties. All of us, there's a group of us, but I could see, and I remember just vividly sitting in the chair, opening gifts, and I'm just holding my kid the whole time, because she's about a month old, like a little over a month old. So technically her 5th Christmas, but she's barely 4, so she's learning, and we'll talk about that in parenting, but she's just learning all about the different holidays and all this kind of stuff. It's really interesting in our household. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And interesting isn't funny, I guess you could say. All right, digital trends. Oh, man. I love me some digital trends where people can get terribly hurt. And I don't love them because I want people to get hurt. It's just, it has been content for this podcast ever since the beginning of Go Tell It to the Wall. And here we have another one. This one's not really challenge-based, but I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of these videos popping up over the holidays you shouldn't be gathering, but as families gather for the holidays. And this is this mousetrap game. If you're not familiar with this, someone shared on TikTok, their grandmother plays this game, and they played it at Thanksgiving, but it's like a holiday game they play regularly. And what they do is they throw some cash down on like the kitchen or dining room table, wherever, some table. You blindfold a person. Whenever there's a blindfold involved, things are not, they're not going to go well. Come on. It's just, if someone says, hey, definitely think about what the hell you're up to in that particular instance. But you put a blindfold, and in addition to the cash that is left on the table, and I believe the blindfold goes on first, so you don't even get to see where the cash is. In addition to the cash, they put set mouse traps. Now, if you've never dealt with a mousetrap, outside of seeing it on like cartoons, mousetraps are serious business. It is not humane to a mouse getting caught in a mousetrap. And in fact, and I learned this as a kid. When we first moved to San Diego, we had not a serious mouse problem, but a little bit of a mouse problem. Had to set up some mouse traps basically in our garage. The mice were getting into the dog food. I had a very large dog at the time. And so we had to do this. And I learned at a very early age, that can break your finger. And so here we have a grandmother who thinks it's fun. And, and you got to wonder. And someone had even commented on Twitter, and they're like, is she the guy from Saw? Is it? I think the guy has a name, but from, the Saw movies where the guy just tortures everyone. Is she the guy from Saw? And I kind of had that same thought too. No, this doesn't, maybe she's getting some enjoyment out of this. Costs her, $40 to watch a bunch of her relatives that she's mad at break their fingers. But apparently it's a thing. I don't want to do this ever. I would not recommend doing this with anybody family. I wouldn't recommend doing this with anyone you don't know. Like, don't go setting up mouse traps in this. Just come on. It's blindfolds and mouse traps do not mix. They don't. Let's take that back a little bit. But people were enjoying it. People were like, "This is great." Just really goes to show you, like, the sociopathic tendencies of people in the world. That they look at that and they go, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that." Broken fingers. That's the other thing too. Is it really worth getting a broken finger and it gets so bad you have to go to the hospital and get it set and you're taking up space in the hospital? Like, oh, what happened? I stuck my finger in a mousetrap. Jesus Christ. In other news on digital trending platform things. What? In other trending on digital platform news, MAGA March. That's right, the MAGA March, Make America Great Again march that was happening in Washington, I think like yesterday. I don't know. I'm so tired of following these things, and we're finally hitting the point where the media is like, whatever. We're not even going to give you airtime on this. But I was aware that this was happening, and apparently, and this has happened before, but some people from the MAGA March, they used a photo to show the magnitude of people at this MAGA March in Washington, D.C. And I swear, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, you could, if you weren't aware and you tried to pass something off as different, I kind of get it. We're at a point now, people can just Google and fact check. These are not hard things. Well, apparently this photo that got shared widely on social platforms was actually from the March for Our Lives protest in 2018. Not even the same year, let alone the same group of people protesting. So good job, MAGA and Proud Boys. Jesus Christ, like, how dumb do you have to be like, nope? And then at the same time, I also wonder often, because you have these, there's that I do enjoy on Twitter. There's an account called Trump Voter, and it's a parody account, clearly. And it took me one tweet to see, like, oh, okay, that's a parody account. It's funny because people get mad. I was gonna say get mad at the guy. I don't know that it's a guy. They get mad at the person that runs the account because they're like, how can you support Trump? And it's like, dude, I know it's tough because there are people out there who think like he is tweeting ridiculously, but no, that's a parody account, and so part of me thinks maybe a parody account tweeted this out, and then all the MAGA people ran with it. Either way, Google's a thing. If you haven't heard of it, people, it's a thing that's available. It's free. It's free, absolutely free, and you can just fact check these things. It's amazing. All right, and in fact, speaking of fact-checking things, the Proud Boys leader, the leader of the Proud Boys, I don't even know this guy's name. And you know what? I don't care to know his fucking name. I don't want to know the name of a single Proud Boy out there. This is not an organization that I have any respect for or want to have anything to do with or really want to have any knowledge of unless it's them being idiots. And here's one where the leader of the Proud Boys tweeted out a photo of him standing on the steps of the White House and said, "Oh, thank you for inviting me to the White House," making it seem as though the president or someone at the White House had invited him to the White House. And of course, people ran with this. And I had seen it flying across social platforms like yesterday or the day before. And I was like, this is not shocking at all. Well, apparently, the White House came out and clarified that the leader of the Proud Boys was never actually invited to the White House. He simply went there on one of the public White House Christmas tours, which are happening. And I was aware of these happening. I had a friend who did it in the past week or so, friend on Facebook that I haven't seen in person in years, but, someone I knew from high school. We stay connected. And they were at the White House doing these tours. And so White House came out and said, no, he just did a public tour. He wasn't actually here seeing anybody. Again, fact-checking. Most importantly, fuck the Proud Boys. Alex Jones, he was, of course, out there spewing ridiculousness at this MAGA rally they had going on. But I will say, in all seriousness, he did say to a crowd of people who then cheered that Biden would be removed from office one way or another. Alex Jones, we're all familiar with Alex Jones. I don't like to give him a lot of time, but this is important just for a couple little things. This is inciting violence. The guy is a psychopath. He knows that he has followers who can go to extreme places, especially when it comes to violence. And we've seen this, and Alex, this guy is utterly unhinged. I think everyone has a right to their opinion and all kinds of different things, but I think there's a line that gets crossed, and sometimes those people shouldn't even be allowed to be heard. And Alex Jones is one of those people. saying Biden will be removed from office one way or another. But one really important thing I want to bring up about this is there's a huge misconception when it comes to guns. And that misconception is that only conservatives like guns. Gigantic misconception. The difference is only conservatives like to flaunt their guns for the most part. Now, this is not a blanket statement. I'm dealing in stereotypes right now, and I understand that, and you should understand it. For the most part, only conservatives like to flaunt their guns and post photos and go stand on the steps of Capitol buildings and all these other things. Let me tell you, liberals, progressives, many of them own guns too. I'm not a big gun person myself. I don't think people need to own automatic rifles, but I am a big proponent of responsible gun ownership myself. And a lot of conservatives out there don't realize, like, no. Democrats own guns too. Progressives, they own guns too. I've said this before. I live in Highland Park. It's part of Los Angeles, California. I would love to see one of these Trump trains come rolling through my neighborhood. Would not go well. Now, I don't think we're ever going to get to violence, but Jesus Christ, like, it's so funny how we have that misconception. And I don't know if it's around the world, but definitely in this country. It's like, no. That guy next door that likes to smoke pot and he's a bit of a hippie, and, and plays guitar, and well, that doesn't mean he doesn't own a gun. Misconceptions. All right, positive news. We got some great positive news this week. I mentioned this individual last week. No, the week before, I think, because the Vanderbilt didn't play last week. And that would be Sarah Fuller. Sarah Fuller, who is actually an SEC championship winning soccer player for University of Vanderbilt or Vanderbilt University. It's Vanderbilt. I don't know which comes. Not important here. Why am I focusing on that? From Vanderbilt. And she's the one I mentioned a couple weeks ago who joined the Vanderbilt football team as a place kicker because they needed a kicker. She was the first woman ever to play. Now, if you don't follow sports, please forgive me. It does get a little intricate when it comes, because I won't say she's the first woman to play in a collegiate football game. That's not true. She is the first woman to play in what they call a Power 5 college football game. And these are the bigger colleges here in the United States. So without getting into details on that, I recognize there's a difference. And if you're someone that knows the differences, then you kind of understand anyway. But regardless, yesterday, as Vanderbilt played, she was already the first woman to play in a Power 5 football game. She became the first woman to score a point in a Power 5 football game. She kicked 2 extra points. The extra point is that kick that you see kicked. Again, I'm speaking to people that know nothing about football, but that's a kick you see right after a team scores a touchdown. She scored 2 of those. First woman ever to do it in a Power 5 conference football game, as I said. And this is just something to absolutely applaud here. I know a lot of people have come out and said, oh, it's a publicity stunt and all. So, you can put that aside. Ignore the excuses, I would say, and just enjoy the history behind this. And especially in the year of our Lord 2020, where we need all the positive news we can possibly get, let's look at this as a positive thing. So good on you, Sarah Fuller. Good on you, Vanderbilt. And thank you for bringing us a little bit of positive news in this very, 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 very tough year. On that same note, I've said it before, just a reminder, just once New Year's Eve hits and we cross into 2021, that doesn't mean all of this madness stops. Like, the calendar doesn't care. COVID's not nope. I think we're done, guys. No more COVID. I love that because everyone's like, oh, 2020. No, it's COVID, but it's not the year's fault. Don't blame 2020. Oh, man, if only we would have had Barbara Walters on the ABC ball drop and she said, I'm Barbara Walters and this is 2020. I think everything would have been so different. All right, COVID updates. The vaccine. Oh, we have vaccines that have this morning started shipping around the United States of America. Vaccines in other countries have begun being deployed. I know the first person in, I don't know if it was in all of the UK or just in Great Britain, got her vaccine within the past week, and I know Canada has vaccines rolling out as well. But for those of us that live in the United States, we're seeing this, and we see a light at the end of the tunnel now which we've known was going to come. But now that light is just getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And for someone like myself, I am a long ways away from getting a vaccine because I am not as high risk as many other people out there. But just knowing there's that light at the end of the tunnel. And at the same time, I think now more than ever, we need to be vigilant and remain vigilant. Because just because you see that light doesn't mean we can let our guard down at this point. In fact, just staying more vigilant and getting to that point is why it's so important. We know there's a point now. We know we just have to get there. Let's continue to be vigilant. Let's continue to stay home. Let's continue to wear masks. Do everything we can to minimize the spread and then get to that vaccine. In fact, even in my neighborhood, the people, I've said this before, it's such a political thing, but even in areas like Los Angeles, people don't care. There was parties going on in my neighborhood yesterday. And in fact, I'm sitting in my house yesterday. I was doing something, and I'm like, whoa, I just put my kid down for a nap. I'm like, what is going on? I could hear it. All the windows in my house are closed. The doors are closed. I open my front door, and I go, kind of walk down to my backyard, and insanely loud mariachi music. Insanely loud mariachi music 2 doors down from where I live. They're throwing a gigantic party in their backyard with a full mariachi band, amplified and everything, as we're in the height of this pandemic. And in fact, my neighborhood, Highland Park, they just came out recently and they said that Highland Park is actually a little bit of a hotbed as far as the spread of COVID. And I wasn't shocked at all. So all I have to do is stand at my front window and I could see that people just don't care, even in this neighborhood. Parties with a mariachi band. And I'll tell you, I was pissed. And I'm still a little pissed. I'm really sick of these people that have no respect for others. And the one that really killed me with that, is I had to tell my now 4-year-old that she couldn't have a birthday party. And don't get me wrong, I know all kids have had to sacrifice things, but that's kind of her one big thing is she has a birthday party every year. We don't throw tons of parties, and and she's used to seeing that. She's used to having family for Thanksgiving, and that was tough, and her birthday was tough. And here's my poor 4-year-old. I'm trying to explain to her, no, we need to keep everyone safe. People need to stay safe from the virus. And she's in her room and she's hearing this crazy mariachi band 2 doors down. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The disparity. And here I am. I'm just like, all right, here's another weekend at home. It's absolutely insane. But we have to get there. We have to get there. And we will. We will. And I'll tell you, I am not a grudge holder. Maybe I'm not a regular grudge holder, but I'm taking note. I'm sitting in my we ain't friends no more, people that are disrespecting this and have no respect for anyone else but themselves. Probably not even really respecting themselves. All right, COVID and allergies. This is becoming a thing recently, and it's happened in my house. Like the other day, my wife was coughing and sneezing a bit, and it was one of those things because I've done it too, where I'm like, oh man. And she's like, oh, I hope I'm not getting sick. And I was like, you're not getting sick. And allergies have become a huge culprit right now, kind of when it comes to coughing and sneezing and everything else. And we learned at the beginning of the whole pandemic that sneezing is not really a big identifier of COVID, but coughing obviously is. So I know this can be challenging for a lot of people, and it's happening to me as well, that extra stress right now. But I think it's knowing those differences. And just kind of being vigilant on that. For me, I tend to lean on the temperature taking. Like, okay, don't have a temperature, so most likely it's just allergies. And I've had them. The wind blew through here yesterday. In fact, I was sitting on my couch in my living room. My wife was sitting there too, and both of us were like, "What the hell's going on?" I look at it, it's just the wind blowing everything. It's allergy time. And in fact, I've been dealing with it for a couple weeks now, and it's not horrible. Like, I'm not sick. But it's that little bit of congestion that honestly I just wouldn't even be paying attention to, except we're all hyper vigilant right now because you don't want to be like, oh my God, I'm coughing. Do I have COVID? So stay strong with that, especially if you're someone that regularly gets allergies. Know that you're getting allergies, and even if you're being as vigilant as you could still catch a regular cold. So it's just knowing those differences, and I think not only the temperature taking, but it seems like the loss of smell and taste, even though it doesn't affect everyone who gets COVID, it seems that is an early indicator. Like you could end up losing taste and smell before you start with the crazy coughing or the body aches and all that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep an eye on. But know that other people are dealing with these allergies as well. COVID Christmas. That's where we are. We are at a COVID Christmas. I guarantee there's nobody out there that thought back in March we'd still be doing this in December at Christmas time. Nobody at all. But here we are. And I think the important thing here to remember is that, COVID doesn't care about the calendar. At the same time, we get so attached to a calendar and to dates and being told how to celebrate, how to do certain things. And at the end of the day, we don't need to let a calendar dictate spending time with family. Just because a calendar says, well, this is the day that you put gifts under a tree and unwrap them, who cares? Who cares? Especially with what we've learned this past year and with the pandemic and how important family is and how important community is. Who cares? Do it in February, March, April, and when it's much safer. Have your Christmas celebration then. And I will take this time to point out Jesus wasn't even born on Christmas. So if you're like, oh, Jesus is the reason for the season and all this other stuff, well, then celebrate in spring when Jesus was actually born, because he wasn't born in the winter. And I'm not going to get into details, but this is a well-known fact. Any educated Christian or Catholic isn't going to argue that with you anyway, because it's true. It is 100% true. So keep that in mind. Celebrate at a later date. That's what we're going to do in my family. It's like, you know what? I don't care what this calendar says. I mean, Santa's going to come. Santa comes on Christmas, but you don't need a huge family gathering for Santa to come there for your kids. You can still leave out the cookies and milk. Although in my house, we usually leave a little, no, we don't. We leave them cookies and milk. I always joke. Pretty sure Santa would like a little spot of whiskey instead of some milk, or some spiked eggnog. But that's not true. I imagine it's hard to fly the sleigh and the 8 reindeer if you're drinking whiskey or eggnog at everyone's house. And important, if you weren't aware of this, the CDC actually came out this past week and said, don't even hang out with anyone outside your household. We were kind of in the small gathering thing, but now they're saying you shouldn't even be around people outside of your household. And this is where we just have to be vigilant for the next month or so. And the thing is, if we could get everyone on the same page and everyone just stayed the fuck home for 2 weeks, we'd be in much better shape. But the bottom line is not everyone's going to do that. Those of us out there with common sense are going to have to do it, and we're going to have to pick up the slack for everyone else that doesn't really give a shit about the rest of the world. And that's just how it is. What can we do? But we should definitely be listening to scientists, and the scientists say that we shouldn't be hanging out with people outside of our house. All right, mental health. I don't have a lot this week, but I do want to talk about something very important, and that would be the holiday pressure from family. You have holiday pressure every year from family and friends, and some people have more pressure than others, to celebrate a certain way, to do certain things, and all this other stuff. And we live in such a materialistic society. It's become so gift based and everything else, and then here comes 2020 and a pandemic, and the pressure is going to be even worse for many people out there. And the reason I bring this up from a mental health standpoint is don't sacrifice your health for others, whether it's your mental health or your physical health here in this instance, because it's not worth it. It isn't worth it by any means. And do your best to not succumb to that pressure. There are compromises, but you shouldn't be sacrificing your own health for others just because they want to do a certain thing on Christmas or they want things to run a certain way. It's just simply not worth it. And that's the thing, even if we want to say, oh, well, it is Jesus' birthday. Well, if you know anything about Jesus, you know that Jesus would sacrifice his birthday if it meant one person didn't have to die. Not thousands, one. That's Jesus. So if you're somebody, think about that. What's important to you? In fact, on another note, even outside of mental health, that's why people tend to have problems with religion. Yesterday, I was having one of those points because That house party a couple houses down, the reason they were doing it is because it was the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. No problem. Celebrate the feast. Don't just skirt safety and regulations because you feel like you need to celebrate. And that's why people get upset with religion, because you have all these pastors out there who are still insisting on packing churches and everything else. And then people come out and they say, well, the grocery store is open. Why can't the church be open? Because people have to fucking eat. You don't have to go to a building to pray. You don't. You don't at all. So don't sacrifice just because you have pressure from other people. There's plenty of time to make up for that. There's plenty of time to celebrate and see family. But it is much more important right now to make sure that you're able to see that entire family, all those friends, once we get to the end of this. So take care of yourselves. Take care of your immediate family and take care of yourselves before you start worrying about extended family and friends and everything else and making everyone else happy. Right now, you need to prioritize yourself and your kids if you've got kids. You know, that's what it's all about right now. Speaking of kids, parenting. So navigating the holidays with the toddler and COVID, it's been fascinating for me. And it's funny, there were certain things that I kind of was braced for. If you've listened to the podcast for a long time, you know that we take an annual trip to Los Olivos, which is an area near Santa Barbara. It's wine country. It's wine tasting, and they do a tree lighting every year. And we go up there with a bunch of friends and get a Airbnb. We've stayed at the same one 2 or 3 years in a row, and we had a different one before that. And we take the kids and everything. My kid loves Los Olivos. She obviously doesn't get to drink wine, but there's Christmas lights, and she loves staying in the house and all these other things, and it's cold up there, so she gets bundled up and everything else. I was braced for her to kind of wonder why that wasn't happening this year. That didn't end up being a huge deal, weirdly. I think I was more sad about it than my kid was, partly because I didn't get to drink very, very tasty wine, but it's also just something I enjoy doing annually that we didn't get to do this year. Next year. I'm certain next year, if I'm doing an episode like this next year, I better be doing it from another country, because if we're still in this a year from now, I don't want to live in the United States anymore. That's for damn sure. I'm already pretty damn close to not. I'm already there of not wanting to live here, but I'm definitely out at that point. But navigating the holidays, it's challenging, but you have to make the best of it. So finding other ways to entertain and celebrate. Now, obviously, one of those video calls with family, but there's plenty of activities out there that you can just do in your home with your kids, And it's also just taking advantage of enjoying kind of the smaller family Christmas time, which is something I'm trying to remind myself of, that I can really take in my 4-year-old at Christmas right now without all these other distractions. Now, I love the other distractions, but looking at the bright side of it and knowing that, this is really, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and remember this. Not just because of the pandemic, but because we all compromised and we had to celebrate in a new way, and it's going to be memorable. Explaining the differences with my kid has been fun lately. Now, I know we're going to get into more of them, and unfortunately, I know nothing about I know nothing about Kwanzaa. And it's not for any reason, I've just never, and I don't know a lot about Hanukkah. The only reason I know things about Hanukkah is from having Jewish friends. And so I know those other holidays are going to come and be like, all right, Google, what is this? But we've definitely been talking about Hanukkah and the menorah. And in fact, my wife was showing my daughter pictures of people's menorahs on Facebook yesterday. And my daughter doesn't get a lot of screen time, obviously, but sometimes it's like, oh, look at these pretty menorahs. And we were talking about friends of ours and hers specifically that are Jewish. She has one of her best friends is Jewish, very Jewish for lack of a better word, because and what I mean is they celebrate all the holidays, know all the traditions and everything else. So she's aware of this. But the funny thing that happened was she decided that she wants a menorah now because she's seen these cool, lighted candle menorahs. I don't want to have to deal with it, so I have not explained to my daughter that there's such thing as an Advent wreath, because I just don't want one in my house, to be honest. But there is a compromise there. However, my wife said to her, we're not Jewish, so we can't, and I don't know what the rules are, but it just seems like, no, we're not Jewish, and it's not because we don't like. We don't have a menorah because we're not Jewish. She said, no, I don't want a Jewish menorah. I want a Christmas menorah. My wife tells me this. I just started laughing. I was like, okay, just what, but this is kind of her way of learning the differences in the holidays and everything else. And I'm sure she's just seeing candles and she's like, that is so cool. And that's what she wants. Interestingly, under normal circumstances, we would be at other people's houses. We have been at other people's houses where there was a menorah in previous holiday seasons. But now she's noticing, and if not for the pandemic, we would be seeing some up close and personal. And my sis Laura's got one, and that's Auntie Laura, who lives like 5 minutes away. It's just we're not congregating because of the pandemic. So it's going to be fun next year when she's like seeing menorahs and everything else. And I don't know if she came up with $1 billion idea or if she's just looking to have lit candles in the house, but maybe a Christmas menorah is a thing. Although, like I said, if you're familiar with Advent, the Advent wreath it's not the same as a menorah by any means, but that you light a candle once a week through the Advent season, and you could theoretically have lit candles in the house. I'm just not a fan of open flame in the house. I think this happens when your family loses a house to a forest fire. You're just like, no, let's not just have lit candles chilling. I get the appeal, but no. Like, I don't even light candles for scented stuff. We use one of the diffusers in my house just because it's so much safer. And in other news of the holiday season, my 4-year-old has declared multiple times starting yesterday that she wants to be a toy maker when she grows up. And I said, oh, do you want to be Santa? She said, no. My wife, do you want to be an elf? No. I just want to be a toy maker. And this is one of the cutest and the innocence of children. And she said to my wife and I this morning, she said, I just want to make toys for all my friends. I said, holy shit. maybe I'm doing something a little bit right here. I mean, there's other times where she's like, I want this and this and this and this. And okay, I know. You have a lot of things, but we don't need to have everything. But then there's that side of her where she's like, no, I just want to make toys. Not even make toys for herself. She wants to make toys for all of her friends. The purity of kids. Like, we ruin children. Adults just ruin children because they come out so great, and then it's all just adults ruining them. Terrible. It's like that saying, we don't deserve dogs. We don't deserve children a lot of times. That's for damn sure. All right, common sense. Oh, man. I don't even have anything big this week, but this popped up in my feed recently. And I've talked about things like this before because I can't even remember whatever company had beat up like sneakers, and they were like pre-scuffed up and beat up sneakers so you could look like you couldn't afford new. I don't even understand. I don't remember what that whole thing was. Well, here we have a Louis Vuitton, Louis Louis, that Louis, I always want to say Vuitton, but it's like, yeah, see, I can't even say it. That company, overly expensive things. They are coming out with a skate shoe. Yeah, you heard that right. Skate shoes, because that's what we have to do these days is take things that are simple and were meant to be cheap in the first place and make them extremely expensive. I didn't even look at what the price tag on these things will be, and they've apparently collaborated with some professional skater. But that's right, Louis Vuitton skate shoes coming your way soon. They're probably going to cost you $2,000 for no reason whatsoever. And this, like I said, it's just completely counterintuitive to the skate shoe. I remember when Nike got into the skateboarding shoe business a few years ago, and they were like twice the price of Vans. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, stick to and I'll be honest. In this closet right behind me, there are two pair of Nike Stefan Janoski skate shoes because I did end up getting some. But when I say more expensive, I paid like $80, and that's like I was like, oh God, I don't know. All right, I can have this nice pair of shoes. I've had them for years. Like, okay, $80 for all right. Once in a while, I'll do that. But it's also just a great example of wealth disparity. And in fact, this came up recently, and I want to talk about this from a common sense perspective. And I'm paraphrasing here, but there's the thought of keeping poor people poor because they are constantly having to buy cheaper things, but in the long run, they aren't actually cheaper. And the example that I'd seen was, someone who can't afford to buy a pair of $50 boots. So instead, every year, they buy a pair of $10 boots, and those boots wear out throughout the winter. However, someone who has the money to can buy a pair of $50 boots, and those boots are going to last at least 10 years. So when you do the math on it, it's $50 versus $100. The person that can't afford the boots is actually spending $100 over 10 years as opposed to $50 by somebody who can afford to just buy those boots from the beginning. And this is incredible. It's incredibly interesting because it is definitely a way of keeping the working class or the lower class, the poorer class, poor. Rent-a-center, and these things are great examples of that. You ever see those commercials for, like, Rent-a-Center? Go and do the math on it. And, like, what your payments, you end up paying for 5 years for some TV or something. That thing's paid off in a year, and you're still paying for it for years just because you can't afford to go buy one in the first place. You're paying 5, 6, 7 times the cost of what it should be. But at the same time, there's these other sides, and that got me thinking about the other side of things where it's unnecessary, like these skate shoes. There's not a difference between those and even those $80 Janoskis that I have in the closet or my $50 Vans. And for the record, I don't really usually pay $50 for Vans. I ordered some Vans. Vans had their friends and family discount. I bought two pair of Vans on Friday night. Ordered them. I paid $25 for one pair, and I paid $7 for the other pair. Smart. But that's the difference there too. Is it does go from the other side because, like jeans is a good example. You can go to Walmart and you can probably get some $10 jeans, and those are going to wear out real quick. Or you can go find some Levi's for $40, and Levi's going to last you 20 years. They were literally Levi's were designed for dudes panning for gold. That's where Levi's came from. If you're not familiar with jeans in general, but Levi's especially. But then you have $200, $300, $400, $500 jeans. I don't know if True Religion's still a thing, but like True Religion and seven jeans, like all the. That's the differences. And here's just a great example of that with Louis Vuitton skate shoes. Just lame. Like, come on, don't get in a skate shoe game. And that's what it is. It's this whole streetwear thing. Like, you're in a streetwear. I get emails and stuff like once in a while. It's like, oh, new streetwear trends. I'm like, what the fuck is streetwear? And I look and I'm like, I still don't understand what streetwear is. And that's fine. Like, have your own style. But the whole thing for me is like, why you're paying thousands of dollars to look like that? And to each their own. I own 100 some. I don't pay a lot for my Vans, but I do own over 100 pairs of Vans. So I am not one to talk. It just always blows my mind that people want to spend that much money on certain things. It's like, Jesus Christ. So I always joke, like, my most expensive pair of pants that I own is a pair of Lululemon men's, like, yoga pants. Because they're, like, $100 pants. And someone gave them to me for Christmas. But I don't pay $100 for pants. Any kind of pants. I pay $40 for you. If you're smart, 38 to $40, you get some Levi's. Bam. You just wait till there's a sale. Boom. Done. There's definitely that. There's definitely that in between. Suits. That's where I'll go. My suits. You got to. To be honest, you got to drop a couple $100 on a suit. But for someone like me, suits are for weddings and funerals, and fortunately, I don't have none of those going on right now. But fortunately, not a ton of those going on at my age. I'm kind of in the middle right now. I went through a period in my late 20s where it was like every weekend I felt like I was at a wedding, and now it's like, okay, thank God that's slowed down a little bit. Now it's like a couple a year. All right, entertainment news. I feel like we got really tangented on that common sense. I don't even know what was happening there. Wealth disparity, and I'm not a very smart person, so it's like just kind of rant about silly things that don't have a educational basis, life experience basis, I guess you could say. But like I said, entertainment news, I don't have a lot here, but I do want to talk about a couple quick things. If you're not aware, Disney made a bunch of announcements. They are turning every single thing they own into a Disney Plus series. You think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It's literally every single thing they own. Of course, it's not every single thing they own, but I look and I it gave me a headache. I kept seeing all the announcements come through, and I have a lot of it was Marvel and Star Wars, and I have a lot of Star Wars geek friends and Marvel geek friends, and geek is not an insult. Like, that's a term, I'm a punk rock geek. That's, so I don't mean it as like, oh, you're a geek. I mean it like, no, they're like super into it. Like, we'll start having conversations, and I'm like, what? Who? That's a Star Wars character? And they're like, yeah, it was in blah, blah, blah book or blah, blah comic. I'm like, lost me. And that's what I mean when I say that. So all this was getting posted, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't even keep up with this. I cannot keep up with this. I don't know what the hell is happening. I didn't see any Muppets stuff. Come on, Disney. That's what's going to get. See, I'm a Muppets geek. Be all about the Muppet stuff. But no, we're focusing on Star Wars and Marvel. But I will tell you, and here's my one thought on it without even trying to unpack any of the individual shows or anything. Oversaturation is a thing. It is absolutely a thing. And it's extra funny because Disney learned their lesson a few years ago with Star Wars when they were like, we're putting out a film every year. And they're like, here's a Solo film and here's a Rogue One film. And I'm not saying they were all bad or anything. A lot of them were moderately successful, but they learned people kind of got tired of Star Wars for a minute because of the market saturation. And then when they backed off it a little bit, it got better. When they're like, okay, well, here's Mandalorian. And everyone loves Mandalorian. And I'm enjoying Mandalorian. I don't think I love it as everyone's like, it's the greatest show ever. I'm like, okay, it's fine. It's entertaining. I enjoy it. Baby Yoda's hilarious. Like, outside of that. And Bill Burr was cracking me up on that could technically be a bit of a spoiler. So technically spoiler, but I don't know. You knew he was coming back at some point. But Bill Burr had me cracking up on the last episode of Mandalorian. He's just something about the guy. He's real funny guy. But oversaturation, it's a thing. So I'll be curious to see. I have a feeling a lot of this is just gonna trimming the fat, and then they're gonna get back to what they do well, and that's quality content without oversaturating. As much as I talk bad about Disney, like, they know what they're doing. The mouse knows what he's doing. All right, Silver Jake, Less Than Jake, Silver Linings. That's right. That's the name of their new album that just dropped on Friday. Highly, highly, highly recommend. If you haven't heard it yet, I did feel a little bit seen by their track King of the Downside. Listen to it if you know me. I was definitely a little bit seen by that, but I am thoroughly enjoying that album. Less Than Jake is definitely a top 3 band of mine. Had the privilege of seeing their live stream on Friday, which they did a fantastic job with, and which very entertaining. I love Less Than Jake. I'm so happy they have a new album out, and as I said last week, for the Christmas episode, we're also going to include mine. So there should be no complaints to me like, that's stupid. It's like, well, fine. That's what I like. I'm going to do my top 10 albums of 2020, counting down from 10 to 1. Guarantee the Less Than Jake album will be in there. All right, Funko Pop. For those of you familiar with Funko Pop, there's a thing they're doing now, and it's kind of been around for a while, but it was a slow rollout, and especially hindered by the pandemic and everything else. And it's Funko Pop People. And these are custom Funkos that you can make of yourself or others. Imagine building like an avatar, like Facebook has them and stuff, where you pick the hair and everything else. Imagine building one of those, but like a Funko version. If you're not familiar with Funkos, if you're watching the video feed, boom, Funko of Elliot Alderson here. I'm not a huge Funko fan. I am a fan. I'm not a huge Funko fan. I see some people that have like walls covered in Funkos, and they just get all the different Funkos. For me, it's more of just a cool way. Like if you're on the video, you can see I got Deadpool over here. It's just a cool way of having fun characters that I like. So I don't collect sets of them or anything. Behind me, if you look in the still photos that get posted a lot of times, you can see there's a bunch of them behind me. But there's a Jim Henson, there's a Kevin Smith. There's the one thing is I do have the entire set of Mr. Robot, but it's just all random stuff that I like. There's Julian Edelman up there. So I'm a Funko Pop fan, and I think I would love to do this. It's available at the store, but it's different right now because of COVID. So instead of like actually going in and building your own Funko, they kind of put it together for you, and you pick it up. And we'll see if this is something that becomes a little more prevalent online as well. But when it is a little easier to do so, I got to get one, and it's going to sit right here, and I'm hoping I can put like headphones and microphone or something make it look cool here for Go Tell Us the Wall. So check those out if you're a Funko fan. And last thing in entertainment news, college athletics. For those of you not aware, over 8, and we're at the very beginning of college basketball, the beginning of the season. We're not halfway through. We're not near the end the way we are with college football. So far in college basketball this season, well over 800 games have been canceled. 800. 800. And mostly all for COVID, you know. I mean, sure, there might have been one or two when there was canceled for, something, but it's all COVID cancellations. All of it. Football games getting canceled as well. In fact, it was funny. Yesterday when my kid was napping, I went to turn on the TV. I was like, let me throw on a college football game in the background while I'm futzing around here in the living room. And I go to turn on Fox, and like the info, and I just have an antenna. It's not the guide, so it's probably why it doesn't update as quick. But my TV has info, and I hit info. I'm like, college football, yeah, well, whatever this one is. And then I'm sitting there for a few minutes, and I look up. I'm like, wait, why am I watching an old Robin Williams movie? And I realized the football game had been canceled, so they just threw on like a TV movie in the middle of the day there. Now, that's what I want to say. I've said this before. Is it worth it? And it's being brought up so much that it's to save other college athletics. Because football especially, but basketball also to an extent, helps to fund other college sports. And I don't want to get into semantics. I'm very well aware of this, having been an elite, finger quotes, track athlete, and actually knowing people that went to college to run track and cross country collegiately. And, when you're a kid, there's this whole thing like, I get a scholarship and go to school. And it's like, yeah, run track. They're going to give you $1. Like, that's what it is. So football and basketball pay for a lot of these other sports. And I get it. And that's why they're pushing it so hard. But the bottom line to me is it worth, let's say one college athlete gets COVID and passes away. Is it worth that one kid? No. In fact, there was an instance, a player for the University of Florida yesterday. It might have nothing to do with COVID whatsoever, but collapsed on the court and had to be taken to the hospital. And he's stable but in critical condition. And I'm telling you, if it comes back that he had a heart problem because of COVID, then we really need to examine what the fuck we're doing with college athletes right now. Because is it worth their health? Is it worth their lives? No. It absolutely is not worth it. It's not. Simple as that. And we need to be smart about these things. That's all it is. Even if you just delay. Let's play college basketball in the spring instead of the winter. Who cares? Who cares what the calendar says? Who cares? All right, that's going to do it for us. I thought we were going to have a short episode this week. Nope. Extra long. There you go. Like some bonus time, bonus common sense this week for all of you out there. All right, don't forget, next week will be the annual Go Tell It to the Wall Common Sense Sunday-themed Christmas episode. What kind of ridiculousness is Sean going to be wearing? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I think I'm going to avoid... For those of you that are new, I think I'm going to avoid my Santa hat that has bells all over it, because that one drives me nuts every year. I think I'm done with that one, but there's plenty of other ridiculous things that I could be wearing. So don't forget, make sure... I would love to try and do that live. That's something else we're working on. I'm working on new gear in the studio, so please sign up for if you have the means, help us out on Patreon, because we're going to hopefully be bringing in a new machine here in the next 6 months, and then we will go back to the live feeds. I would love to be live for the Christmas episode, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to have the means to do it. But make sure you're seeing it after the fact. Comment on how silly and how ridiculous I am, and tell me how bad my top 10 albums of 2020 is. All right, on that note, Wall fans, Common Sensors, podcast consumers, this has been episode 29 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall. You can follow us on Facebook.com/Go Tell It to the Wall. Also on YouTube, head over to YouTube, search Go Tell It to the Wall, subscribe to our channel. Instagram, my own personal Instagram, which is @SoCalSean, and most importantly would be SeanO'RourkeLive.com. Pick up some merch before Christmas. You should still be able to get that shipped out to you in time for Christmas, or out to some other friend or relative in another location. It should be able to get to them as well, so keep that in mind. Like I said, we will be back next week, same wall place, same wall time. I am your favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and remember, Wall fans, Common Sensors, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.